All right, we call to order this September 28th meeting of the Signal Mountain Town Council. This is a combination electronic meeting. It's partially over Zoom, and some of us are sitting in the Mountain Arts Community Center theater, and there's opportunity if people still want to come this evening for the show. Just kidding. But we're going to begin with the pledge. And did anyone request to do an invocation tonight? So we'll have a moment of silence after the pledge. We'll stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'm gonna turn a noisy fan off. I'll be right back.
Thank you. It may be noisy, but it's keeping us alive up here.
Okay. Carol, will you take roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Bill Lusk,
Here.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Here.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Here.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Here. We have minutes to approve tonight. That's our first order of business. Let's take a look real quick, make sure we have them in order. Just the two nights, August 24th. August 24 and August 10. The ones.
Correct.
Yeah.
I will move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any adjustments need to be made to the minutes?
Yes.
What do you have?
August 24th meeting, page 5, item 15.
I'm sorry, what item number?
15 on page 5. And it appears, Carol, that you've made Dan and I as significant others based on that last paragraph.
I do see that. I will correct that to read that Mayor Landrum made a motion.
Thank you.
Good catch, Bill. All right, we have a motion and a second, minor change. All those in favor, say aye. No, wait, we have to do a roll call, don't we? Roll call vote, please, Carol.
Vice Mayor Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. All right, this is now citizens' opportunity to address council, and we have two ways while we're in our COVID-adjusted methods right now. One is that people can call in on Zoom, and Sam, we had no calls. Anybody set up? So we had no one set up for that. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council? Nope. Nope. Okay. We'll close that portion of the meeting. We now move on to resolutions. Would it be possible, Dick, would it be possible to get me a small mic stand? Because I'm going to need to shuffle papers and speak at the same time a lot. Thank you. Apologize for the technical difficulties, but we're trying to figure this out as we go still. All right, we had 3 people apply, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? How many positions open?
1.
Anybody have a recommendation as to how we go about this process? It comes up every time. I wish it was prescribed in our code how we do this, because we have 3, all 3 great folks, asking to help us. I'm trying to find them in here because we have so many different applicants for things tonight. Does anybody want to make a recommendation to approve someone to the position while I'm looking?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that Susan F. Robinson, have that position on the MACC board.
Yeah, you're going to probably have to speak a little more loudly. I know you're not a loud talker, but
I can be a loud talker.
pull her mic up just a little bit, please. All right, I'll second that motion. Any discussion?
I would just like it, I guess, added to our record that she is a relative of mine.
Oh, is she? She's also a tremendous supporter of the arts, whether
She
or not
is.
she's a relative of yours.
Highly
Yeah.
qualified.
Uniquely qualified.
Yeah, I've worked
for
with
that
Suzanne,
position.
many times for the past 20 years in her association with all kinds of groups. So yeah, I was really excited when we saw that she
I know.
applied.
I didn't know she was going to, but I think she would be, I think we had 3 great candidates.
Yeah, we did.
But I think Susan really is bringing a host of talent to the table that is just unsurpassed.
And we should note that, is Susan a Signal Mountain resident?
She is.
She is a Signal Mountain resident. Okay, so, all right. Well, that's even easier. All right, then. Any other discussion? Hearing no further discussion, Carol, will you take a roll call vote? Wait,
You should have a resolution
Is there-
prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you'll read the heading on
mine are
that.
not in that order, so it's going to take me a minute. Thank you. This is a resolution appointing Susan F. Robinson as a member of the Town of Signal Mountain Arts Community Center Board. We have a motion and a second. Carol, will you take a roll call vote? Oh, Bill, did you have anything I want to make sure we didn't miss you?
No.
No? Okay.
We seem to have lost Carol. I'm waiting for her to try to get back into the meeting,
Okay.
however you'd like to proceed.
Could Harry take the roll call vote?
I'm sorry. Would you like me to?
Could Harry Cash take the roll call vote for us?
I believe so.
I don't see why not.
Yep, speaking to your microphone.
I don't see why not. Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Cheryl Graham,
Yes,
Dan Landrum.
Yes. Carries
Motion
5-0.
carries.
Carol's rejoining us. She was having some weather-related issues at her house.
Was she really? And folks that are watching, there's a storm, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens with that. So this next one is going to potentially amend. Cheryl, if you can find that. Matter of fact, if you could stay ahead of those, that would help, because mine are out of order.
I'm
Next
so
we have-
sorry. Would it take too much to catch me up, or or you just need to move on?
We let Harry do the roll call vote for us. So now we're
Okay.
moving to the amending personnel policy, legal holidays.
Gotcha. Thank
And-
you so much.
We voted 5-0 4-0 for Suzanne Robinson.
Susan.
Thank you so
Susan Rob-
much.
Too many differences. And you're all particular about them. Okay, so this is a resolution amending section 8A1 of the Town of Signal Mountain Personnel Policy relating to legal holidays and holiday pay. And this is something that town manager brought up at least a year ago, and we've discussed a couple of times. So Boyd, if you want to describe how this changes that policy.
Sure. As you mentioned, I brought it up a good while ago. And then during the budget process, we discussed this at length, and it was incorporated in the budget, so that we're adding Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a general holiday for all employees. And we're also adding Veterans Day for full-time employees who have served in the military and who are honorably discharged or who are currently serving in the National Guard or in reserve capacity. We've always recognized them and just felt that something beyond that would be appropriate so that one day a year we can pick up the slack for them. And if possible, they can be off. If they have to work, then they'll get overtime on that day. But we felt it was important to do something beyond simple recognition for them. And again, adding MLK to our standard holiday list. And all of that was included in the budget discussion, and minimal impact on the budget, but was included therein.
All right, do we hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I think this one's really easy. And it's time too. Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. Carries 4-0. Do you have the Tinkerma resolution? Next, we have a resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with Tinkerma Inc. for architectural and engineering services associated with the design and construction of an addition to the Signal Mountain Library for an amount not to exceed $42,000. So this one is a bit different from the kinds of resolutions that we have for construction because this is an externally funded project. So Boyd, if you want to talk about that.
It will
Point that towards your mouth if you don't.
It will happen in much the same way. There'll just be additional processes in that the fundraising arm for the library will donate the funds to the town. They will be restricted for this use, and then we will contract and pay for the services. This portion of the project will be for the architect and engineering for the addition to the library. The overall cost of $42,000 was for the preliminary design, as you see in your packet. Since we did this, we weren't sure, but we have determined that a small portion of this has already been paid directly. So this contract will ultimately be more in the neighborhood of $36,000, but we wrote it as a not to exceed. And the only other thing we have is a contingency or additional funds for certain reimbursable expenses. And that would just be things like printing paper copies of plans or additional services that aren't included in the contract. Anything major like surveys, if we have to have that done, geotechnical services, we'll contract those separately. So this should be a pretty straightforward contract. We just wanted to put that couple $1,000s in there to make sure that simple run-of-the-mill things could be covered and not complicate the process.
Can you go back and give us a bit of the back history on how a project like this works when it's in a group that's raising this? And that's
similar to this, but on a smaller scale when they did renovations to the lower level of the library. And in that case, like I said, if the council agrees to the project, then the fundraising arm, whether it be a foundation or group, then can raise the funds. Ultimately, then those funds are donated to the town for a specific purpose, and they're restricted and can't be used for anything else. Generally, we do kind of segment that so that only the portion that's going to be needed for the upcoming processes are donated. So in this case, once this is approved, then we'll let them know that donation to cover this needs to be made, and we'll move forward with that. As we get to the contract or the construction process, then we'll negotiate those contracts through RFPs and everything like we always do. And the contract will be awarded based on qualifications and pricing.
The net effect of this is that should it be fully funded, and I'm on the library board and it's going to be fully funded, they're in great shape. They're in amazing shape at this stage. The fundraising still continues, but this one's important tonight because they hope to get the real plan started in October. So this moves them in that next direction. So groundbreaking could take place before you know it.
And in regards to this process, budgetarily, we're fine to move forward. We have funds that can cover this. But again, they will be making a donation, and that will require that a budget amendment take place, and will likely be coming within a month or two, so we can look at the larger project, determine if we need to do that in this budget or plan for it in the next. But we will do budget amendments as we move along through this process to account for the additional revenue and expenditures associated with the project.
Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Do you want a second, Bill?
Second.
Any other discussion? I feel like maybe it should go without saying, but it doesn't always, that this project is another example of what I hear from taxpayers all the time, is that you want to see citizens involved in doing things. And this is a citizen-funded project that will add value to a town asset that the town will still own. And it's a significant project. So it's
I think
great.
the aesthetics of it are beautiful too. I'm so excited for this enhancement. It's going to be great.
Yeah. All right, Carol, will you take a roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes.
Holy moly.
Next, we have a resolution authorizing the town manager for the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee to award a contract to Baseline Sports Construction in the amount of $857,297 as the lowest and best bid for repairs and renovations to Marion and Driver Field as part of the local Parks and Recreation Fund grant project, and authorizing additional contingency funds for the completion of the project. So bring us up to date.
This has been an interesting process. We did acquire LPRF grant for a total of $880,000. We're responsible for 50% of that. Put together the plans, had the construction cost estimates from the engineers, and moved forward with the project. When we bid it out, we had two companies bid on it, and they were considerably over the anticipated cost. There were quite a few variables in their bids, but ultimately they were just a few $1,000s apart. The interesting thing was, luckily, that both of their bids departed most significantly from the estimates in one area, the same area. So that allowed us to go back and review those documents and determine if there was an issue. And it turns out that there was. We had an engineer, and then you have a landscape architect that are both working on different aspects of the project. And in some of the areas, they both accounted for some of the work and materials. So we were able to identify that. And by we, I mean mainly Sam and the architect and engineer. They figured out what the issue was there, and then were able to make some clarifications for the contractors. So we went back to them and asked if they would be willing to go through a second process, basically a secondary sealed bid on just that section, since they were made aware of the corrections, the clarifications. They both were willing to do that. We had a second on-site meeting to go over everything. And then they submitted those sealed addendums to their bids. They were opened and made a huge difference in the bottom line, and in fact, got the project in under budget. And ultimately, the low bidder from the first cycle remained the low bidder through the second cycle. So other than having to go through the process, it really couldn't have worked out better. And staff and our professional service folks did a great job working through what ultimately started out as a real headache, because we were way out of bounds on budgeted amount.
For those that might be just getting up to speed on this, this is a long process. 2 or 3 years we've been working on this grant, I believe. LPRF is Local Parks and Recreation Fund. Do I have that right? And that's a state grant. And I get copied all of the LPRF news as it takes place. And there's something to do almost every day with that grant. I mean, this is a time when, if you wonder what Sam as the compliance officer does, these things are heavy lifts. There's a lot that goes on. A lot of work and lots of things that need to be taken care of on a daily basis. And if you don't do them, you'll lose them. Right. So this is great. What's the total grant amount to us, and what's our total cost?
The project, the approved budget for the project is $880,000, and 50% of that is town funds. And that's ultimately what we did on this resolution. We added the additional 22,000 contingency to bring us up to what we currently have budgeted. If anything comes up, if there are any issues, we'll have additional funds to fall onto. And if we get to the towards the end of the process and have those funds, there are things that we would like to do, like simply doing vinyl coated fencing, which will last much, much longer. It's not in the budget now, but as it stands, we may have the ability to do that. And so we'll either use those contingency funds to cover unexpected costs or to maximize the benefit and longevity of the project as we're able.
This one took a positive turn because it didn't look good there for a little bit.
It did not look good at all.
All right, so we've read the header. Do we hear a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll second that one. So any discussion, council questions, discussion about this? That was kind of a long setup for it, but that's all the stuff we needed to know, because it really looked like it was going to cost too much. I was very concerned about this one. Any discussion? Bill, you're on Zoom. You can't tell, but I'm looking at you.
I have nothing.
Okay. All right, Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. Carries 4-0. Carol, do you have the ordinance? Thank you. Next, we have an ordinance to amend Title II, Chapter 13, Section 2-1302 of the Town of Signal Mountain Municipal Code to expand the Town Personnel Committee to 5 members, from 5 members to 7 members. And we talked about this last week. So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? I still think, I love you guys, but I think this is a bad idea. I don't think we should do these kinds of changes to ordinances to accommodate the difficult situation of choosing. Maybe that's not it, but the second thing, we also have had 2 more people apply for these positions now, so we're up to seven. We have 7 applicants, and not that the other applicants weren't all fine, but we've gotten a couple of really qualified, people with personnel experience that have stepped in. So it raises what seems like the obvious question: do you just add 2 more? Why is this number the number that we want to change to?
I do think, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I'll look at somebody else.
The Personnel Committee has been, I start to say you can call it understaffed for how long now?
At least a couple of years, I think.
That's what I was thinking.
That's a
Yeah.
ballpark.
And now we have applicants. I mean, like you said, good qualified applicants that are just coming out of the woodwork all of a sudden. I would like to take advantage of their volunteer spirit and maybe use this opportunity to build up the Personnel Committee and achieve what the town has been needing from a Personnel Committee for these last several years.
I concur with that. I feel like having more input from really qualified, strong candidates who want to give of their time to their community is a good thing in an area that's needed. So I'm in favor of it.
I agree completely.
Go ahead, Bill.
Said I agree completely.
I still love you guys, and I still disagree. I also think that we're setting ourselves up for this is a hot topic right now. When it's not a hot topic, you can make it tough to get a quorum. And I'm also concerned about that, but I don't appear to have any possibility of persuading
Well, I think
anybody.
they've got enough work to keep them busy for a fairly long period of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any additional discussion? Anybody want to tell me you love me too?
Nope.
Guess not. Carol, will you take a roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Bill Lusk,
Yes?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
No. All right, that's it for the things we need to vote on. We move now to, and by the way, that was a first reading. We'll have a second reading at the next meeting on this. And I'll probably say the same things again. So now we have discussion, BZA processes. So I'm the one who asked for this to be on here. So I'm the one who's going to put his neck on the table right now on this subject.
Sorry, we do have Garrett Haynes on the line. Do you want me to go ahead and bring him in?
If we need him, just have him stand by.
Hold off on that?
Yeah.
Just let me know.
Thank you. So the reason I brought this up, I've watched BZA meetings, attended some BZA meetings, and I've been the liaison for the BZA for a little while now. I should begin with saying it's the people who serve on the BZA need to be appreciated with the stress that they deal with, because cases come before them and someone is going to be unhappy. Things come to the BZA because the inspectors from the town say that's outside code, or the planning commission, I guess. But generally, they're coming from dealing with our inspector, usually dealing with Chuck, who works with them, and sometimes just says, no, you're going to have to go before the BZA. So they go to the BZA, they could get turned down. So I appreciate what they do. After the last meeting, and it's happened more than once, I've had people say, what is the appeals process? And I didn't know. You don't just wake up all of a sudden when you get elected to a volunteer job and know everything. And so the first thing I did was contacted the town attorney to find out what it was. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Chancery Court.
That's correct.
All right, so if there's a problem, you go to Chancery Court. And it got me to thinking about several things that I've heard at the BZA meetings. I've heard it said often, well, I'm going to go back to the last meeting. At the beginning of the last meeting, which was after I had suggested this be on here, I was told that if I have questions, I should bring them to the BZA rather than, it's kind of wondering why it was on the council. And that took me back a little bit because I think it is our job to know what happens. This is part of planning and it's part of the whole thing works out. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to bring it up for discussion. But I've also heard several times at our BZA meetings that this concept of setting precedent. You can't allow someone to do something because they're setting precedent. And I was told, and I agree, that I should refer to the Tennessee Code Annotated, which I did and have done. And Harry, correct me if I'm wrong, but the BZA does not set precedent.
Is not what?
Does not set precedent. The rulings of the BZA do not set precedent.
Not necessarily. That's correct. It's not statutory and binding on them forever. There are certain guidelines that they're supposed to use. But most of the time, what they hear is so specific that it can't be used for precedent setting.
And so any changes to code take place with recommendation from the Planning Commission,
Correct.
right? And then sent on to the council.
Yeah, the BZA doesn't establish policy. They don't change the code.
Okay. Another thing that in just kind of thinking about, the work of the BZA and however the BZA works and the work of the town, the word hardship comes up a lot. So, and the word hardship within the code isn't really defined, it's just used. And I think in watching them, it's the hardship of the presenter, the person who's asking for some kind of a variation. And I wonder, and so this next thing I'm about to this is a discussion, we aren't voting on anything. This is just something for us to think about. But when we talk about tree canopy, and with the fact that we have impacted creeks and we have stormwater runoff issues and those kinds of things, sometimes the homeowners come in and what they want to do is place their home in such a way that they don't have to take down trees. Or maybe there's a specific kind of creek that's, they can build over, but maybe they don't want to build over. There've been some of those kinds of cases in the past. And in that case, it seems to me that the hardship is the town's hardship. It's in the interest of the planning of the town. The town may want them to build their house in a non-standard, non-exact code meeting method so that they don't take down a stand of hemlocks. Or you see where I'm coming from on that? Now, the counter argument to that is there is nothing in our code that says if you grant them an exception, a variance, if you grant them a variance, that after they get the house built, they couldn't just cut the trees down anyway, because it's their property. And so one of the things I wonder if we might need to discuss as a planning commission, or maybe that's where it should go, is there a way to deal with that possibly, Harry? So that if somebody entered into an agreement like, yes, we'll keep those trees because we know the town wants us to do that, and we agree to do it for 20 years.
Well, the Board of Zoning Appeals can impose conditions on granting a variance. So I suppose they could do it that way by, yeah, we will grant this variance because otherwise you'd have to take the trees down. But as a condition to granting it, you have to keep the trees there.
For?
I don't know. I don't know if that's limited to a year or in perpetuity.
Is that something we could maybe see if, I bet this road has been traveled before.
I'm sure it has. And one thing you also have to think about is potential repercussions if they were not to live up to that promise. You can't
Move a house.
Right.
Yeah,
If they
right.
cut the trees down to 10 years instead of 20. So, I mean, you have to think through that whole process of what ifs. And I agree that mechanism could be very helpful, but we'd have to work through several steps that might come into play.
Could we, and I guess that's what I'm asking is, could we start that process and thinking more broadly about that is how to protect what we have.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a discussion that no decision needs to be made, but the council ought to take a look at it and see what you all want in terms of protection.
Or maybe the planning commission.
Yeah, probably
at
planning commission.
Yeah, because it lines up with the other stuff. And I think, so this whole concept of the hardship of the applicant versus I'm going to use the word hardship with town. So the hardship of the town, that it's in the town's interest. It's in the land use plan says, this is what we want to do. I feel that's not properly represented within the way the BZA is structured right now. And I think they do a fine job. What they do is fine, but I feel like there ought to be more of a voice or a vote somehow from someone representing the planning commission or representing the council within it. And so I wonder, and I know this is not going to go over well with the folks on the BZA right now, but I feel like the liaison ought to be a participating voting member. And I wonder what the process that would be. And I would also add the caveat in my suggesting this, that since I'm the one suggesting it, I shouldn't be the liaison anymore, because it would appear that I'm doing that just so that I can step in and do something, and that's not it. Let it be somebody else. But in order to represent the town, what do you guys think? So that aspect gets presented, somebody who's,
I mean, I think that's a really good suggestion.
can you, Mike?
I think having that continuity there is good. And I think having a vote makes sense. I mean, we have votes on the planning commission as council members, and I think our perspective, and from a holistic sense, participating in that and having a say in that warrants having a vote. I think it's good to look at it.
Yeah, it just maybe as an option. I don't know how that would work or if we can even do it, Harry.
Well, I'm just looking at the state law for appointing a board of zoning appeals, and it provides the chief legislative body may create a board of zoning appeals of 3, 5, 7, or 9 members, may specify the mode of appointment of members of such board and their terms, which shall be of such length and so arranged that the term of one member shall expire each year, or the chief legislative body may designate the planning commission of the municipality as the board of zoning appeals.
Yeah.
Now, whether a member of the town council or a member of the planning commission could be one of the members, the ad hoc members, not the planning commission, I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't
No
restrict it. It
prohibition.
sounds, yeah, it's not restrictive to that.
That was my question. Is it possible for the planning commission with 2 council members who are voting on it, is it possible for them to take over the duties of the Board of Zoning Appeals? I mean,
They could be, it would require, you'd have to amend the ordinance, which establishes the Board of Zoning Appeals, who the members are. You'd have to amend that ordinance to just change it to the Board of Zoning Appeals, or the Planning Commission will be the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So I don't think we should go that far, that fast right now. I mean, this is just discussing this, and in particular, this close to election and all that kind of, I don't think you should do that. Garrett is online. Is he not? Could you bring Garrett into the meeting? Because I want to ask him. I don't want to misquote him, but I believe he has told me that we may be the only group within the Southeast Tennessee Development District that doesn't do it that way.
That doesn't have the Planning Commission as
Yeah.
BZA? I don't know.
Garrett, are you there? Okay. There he is.
I guess.
There you go. Is that correct, Garrett? Are we, of all the towns that you guys represent, what's the way it's normally set up? Carol has something to say. Or she's frozen.
I just need his name and address for the record.
Oh, name and address, Garrett.
Garrett Haynes, Southeast Tennessee Development District, I guess 1000 Riverside Drive. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, for those that are just watching, Garrett is our staff planner. We pay the Southeast Tennessee Development District to advise us on matters of planning. And so Garrett is involved and makes recommendations to both the Planning Commission as well as the BZA, correct?
Yes, sir.
We were just discussing, the different options for formation. How many, are there towns within Set D that have the Planning Commission be the BZA? And if so, how percentage-wise, how's that work?
Yes, sir. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know I've asked some of my coworkers, and there are a lot of other communities that have the Planning Commission members be the Board of Zoning Appeals members. It's typically the entire Planning Commission is the entire Board of Zoning Appeals. But from what I did hear previously, I do like the idea of having at least one of the members be on the Board of Zoning Appeals. I like that idea.
Yeah, slow down just a bit and speak a little louder, if you don't mind.
Sorry.
Repeat the last sentence.
I was listening in on the YouTube stream, and I heard the idea that having one member of the Planning Commission be on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I just said that I like that idea, as opposed to having the entire Planning Commission be the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay. Is that in place in some of the ones that you work with? I guess what I'm looking for from you is that if you have any upside downsides to the different ways of doing this based on your experience.
There's not been any downside that I've seen personally, but I could see the potential for there to be a con of having the entire Planning Commission be the Board of Zoning Appeals, being that it's the same body passing the same possible judgment.
Harry, what are the three functions? And again, my computer is being used for the Zoom meeting back there, but there are some distinct functions that the Board of Zoning Appeals does. Now, if there's a decision they make that the applicant disagrees with, they can take it to Chancery Court, but under what circumstances would an appeal be made to the body? Microphone, grab your mic.
If an applicant disagrees with a decision by a building inspector or some other staff member, if a special permit is requested, it goes to BZA, and a variance request.
So under what circumstances would they appeal that? Are you saying that they would be appealing to the Planning Commission if that was the case, something that the inspector had said?
Yeah, if it's a code interpretation by the building inspector and they disagree with his decision, they can take it to the BZA.
Okay.
And I don't know how often that happens.
I think that's fairly rare. The vast majority of their cases are variances and occasionally special permits.
Okay. Well, Garrett will probably have more questions as we research, ways to look at this. I don't think that's something that we would want to change, just quickly, but.
Quickly, the code provides Board of Zoning Appeals powers and duties. 1102 is administrative review to hear and decide appeals where it is alleged by the appellant that there is an error in any order, requirement, permit, decision, or refusal made by the building inspector or any other administrative official in carrying out or enforcement of any provision of these regulations.
Okay.
I can't think of a scenario that's come up, but in theory it could.
Right. And if it did, the conflict wouldn't be based on a decision that the Planning Commission had made. It would be a decision based on something that town staff had made. So that's still not coming back to the same group you went before.
No, it wouldn't be.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other questions or thoughts for this? If we can maybe research, Boyd, that hybrid idea, And again, since I'm the one who suggested it, I would absolutely understand that I create ire by doing that, and I think I should step out of the picture and let it be somebody else. But my reason for bringing it up is the very thing that we keep talking about as far as long-term planning and what it is we want to do with the town. And in trying to find ways to protect our canopy and protect our creeks and protect all of that, sometimes what appears to just be a convenience for the applicant can also be something that's to the benefit of the town or the benefit of the neighborhood as a whole. And so that's that whole idea, again, of looking at it as the hardship of the town, the need for the variance. Hardship's not a good word, but sometimes it's better off for the town if a variance is granted as opposed to just for the applicant. So anything else? All right, moving on. Transfer station operations. We asked for this. And when I looked at, I'm in the process of remodeling a house, and I looked at the transfer station, you know, what it's going to cost me for some of the things that I've been taking to the transfer station. And wow, but Boyd, you want to go over that? But we need to look at this because it's costing us too much as a town.
Yeah, I had the same reaction. Loretta and Leslie and I worked through this, and I actually put we actually looked at, you know, the construction materials hoppers and what it costs us to have those pulled, and what the average cost for one of those was for the process and for the tonnage and all of that, and came up with basically a per cubic foot cost, and then applied that to, okay, when you bring things in, if we charge you that same amount, what would it look like? And it's a fairly straightforward process. This is what it costs us. We need to see how we can cover that cost of operation. And it lined up pretty well on the lower end of volume. For a standard pickup truck or something like that, it pretty much aligns with what we've been doing. As you get higher quantities, larger loads, it goes up accordingly. And as the owner of a 7 by 12 trailer, I realized real quickly that if I load that thing up, it's going to cost. But I couldn't move past the fact that it should, that, you know, that we should be paying as users for.
Keep your mic up there.
For what we're putting into the system. Now, one of the things that the main thing that really brought this to light recently was with the COVID scenario, and people were at home and volumes went up dramatically, but it stayed that way. And we're operating that facility the same way we have for decades. And the town has grown and grown and grown. And we realize that we don't have the ability to do the same thing we've been doing and be able to manage it. And we looked at how do we minimize some of that increased impact. And one of the things that isn't listed here that we have been doing for a while now is not accepting contractors' materials. And we go through the arguments that, well, those are coming from a resident's home. Well, they may or may not be. They may be coming from a home in Walden or Hamilton County as well. But if they are coming from a resident's home, that contractor has more than likely included the cost of disposal in the pricing. And that's where we've added a second construction materials bin, figured out how to do that. That's helped, but they still fill up. And we just got to figure out a way that we can get the volume to a more manageable level and do a better job of covering cost in the process. And this is what we came up with as a proposal. And why it's strictly on as a discussion item to begin with. Now, one of the things that we are suggesting is that we limit loads altogether. And some of these, when you look at the 2 and 3 foot thick loads, may not actually come into play. We just kind of carried out that chart to show what it would be, but we would like to try to limit where there's, sidewalls on trailers are no higher than 24 inches. So ultimately, you shouldn't be able to pack it much higher than maybe 3 feet if it were flattened out. So these are just the processes we work through to try to come up with a workable fix for the issues that we're seeing, and that aren't going to change.
I know you've talked about this before, but it's been a while. Why not just have a scale?
Most people that come in have a variety of materials. So metals, for instance, we don't charge for. We actually can make a little bit of money off of those. Household trash, we don't charge for. The only thing we charge for is the building materials. So if they come in with a mixed load, they're going to have to unload everything but the building materials and then come back down and weigh. When we really thought through how it would work, the cost of the scale just seemed too high for the benefit that it would actually give us.
Is there potential that the cost of because I know it's a hard time, we have a hard time getting someone to person this all the time anyway. It gets more complicated. It's going to have to be under more scrutiny, which is going to require a pair of eyeballs and people.
The idea of this is actually make it less complicated, because as it stands now, we have a cost for a pickup truck load. And then from there, the attendants, whoever that may be, they go out and eyeball it, as you said, and say, okay, that looks like about. And in this case, if you have a standard pickup truck and it's full to the top, you know what that is. Beyond that, it's pretty much on the spot calculations. With this, if somebody pulls up with a 5x10 trailer and it's the load leveled is about 2 feet high, you say, okay, this is the size of your trailer. That looks like about 2 feet to me. Do you agree with that? Yeah, that's about right. Right there's the cost. You can work through that pretty quickly with somebody when they come in, and then put your finger on a chart that says this is what it is. I think that actually simplifies the things and takes some of the pressure off of the attendant.
Are we accepting any construction materials from non-residents at this time?
I think the only thing we're accepting now are residents, non-residents who already held cards and had paid for them.
Do they monitor that? I mean, I know Dan just said that, I think we've had a hard time having somebody there at all times to.
Yes, if anyone who comes in and Loretta's on the line, she can jump in anytime she wants, but anybody who comes in with building materials is supposed to stop and see the attendant. And at the time, they will check that.
Will non-residents be charged more than this suggested sheet we have here?
Not if they've already purchased a non-resident card and paid an additional $200 for that.
Okay.
That means they then would be on the same scale.
Okay.
Again, that would simplify it.
Hi, Loretta.
I think you're muted, Loretta. She's still muted. Now she's frozen. Welcome to Zoom world. There you go. Loretta's being very still, or her computer is frozen.
She was sitting there very calmly listening to what I was saying. So I think I pretty much got it right.
You got it. Okay. All right. Anybody? There she is. Hey, Loretta, anything you want to? Oh, she went.
Here I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No, I don't really have anything to add to what Boyd said. We do, check everybody when they come in to see what street they live on, and if they're not within the town, they have to have their non-resident card. But we are just seeing a lot more material coming in that what our facility is used to seeing. So we've got to do something to try to keep up. And this is our attempt to do that.
And I noticed you did some very helpful reconfiguration the other day by adding a second construction bin and moving the metals over, right?
Yes. We added another building materials bin, and that's helped a lot. And then moved our scrap metal over to the side. And so that's really helping out a lot.
So I know we need a new website, and I know that's opening up a can of worms, but with our current website, on a Saturday, if a bin is full, is there a way that you could put it on the website so people could just check and say the bin's full? I mean, like, be pretty dynamic with that, or is that just not practical right now?
With that is it takes a while to get something on our website, and it'd be hard to keep it up to date to that minute, and now I'm hoping that having the second container will alleviate a lot of that problem.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, just again, seeking some input and guidance so that we can, being that this is a change in fees, I'll have to look. Most of our fees are set by ordinance. Some are not, though they probably need to be. So we'll need to look at exactly how we would need to implement this, but obviously want guidance from council before we move in that direction.
This is still going to require discretion because somebody could come in, metal roofing, for instance, is flat. Somebody could come in with, 1,000 pounds of metal roofing that would be good for us. But then on top of that, have piled 4 feet of insulation that came out from under that roofing, which weighs almost nothing and doesn't take up much space. You look at the charge, so it's still going to be complicated.
It will. You'll still have to try to consider the volume of building materials. But again, now you have, this is how much a pickup truck costs. Right. And that's it.
Right.
At least this will give them some guidance and help so they can actually talk to the person. And, if you have something to work from, you can work together with that person and figure it out a lot better than just, I don't want to say guessing, but you really have to just estimate what that is. You will still be doing this, but I think it will enable you to do it a little more effectively, and you can do it with the customer in coming to terms with what you think is appropriate.
I understand why no box trucks, but why no vans? Does that mean minivans?
I think that refers to more of the commercial vans, because you'll see, cars, SUVs, a minivan, something like that would fall in that category, I believe.
What will we recommend that residents do with brick, block, concrete, and roofing materials?
Hamilton County has a landfill, but other than that, I'll defer to Loretta on that. That is a very costly material category for us because obviously of the weight.
You're mute.
As not a large amount. So we'll have to figure out, what a large amount is. We can take some, but if you get a contractor that's doing a big project and brings in a lot of brick or, block, that's just too much for us to handle. It's just too much. So we can take, homeowners typically have a smaller amount of that kind of material.
Yeah, I think, and that's where this gets complicated. If it's a contractor that's working for a homeowner, at the beginning of our project, we had a dumpster. And and it was there for 21 days. And when it left, it had 6 tons in it. And it would have filled, I even called Loretta before I started the project. Remember that, Loretta? And said, is it reasonable for me to pay each time? And she said, sure. But then, as we talked it through, turns out that wasn't, we decided, okay, that wasn't going to make sense. 6 tons would have filled it every day, right?
Yes, yes, it would.
And a lot of that was brick and block, that had to be moved. So,
Mhm.
and my point wasn't to talk about my own situation, but it was to say, when you've got a contractor who's doing a major project, they ought to be buying a dumpster. And maybe this helps move.
That would be helpful for us if they would do that, because we are really having a hard time just keeping up with contractors that have large loads. Then we get over full and we don't have room for a resident coming in trying to, get rid of their materials.
Yeah, cleaning out a garage or tearing down a shed or something.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. This isn't going to be popular.
No, well,
It's not.
No, I mean, we do hear from, and we've limited the use for brush to residents as well. And I don't think it's been major, but I know I was contacted about a situation where a resident had a friend who was a contractor trim a few limbs, and they wouldn't let him dump it, and he was upset. And I called down and talked to him. They said, yeah, we know exactly what you mean. It was a stake bed truck that was piled up to the top that had a company logo on it, and the guy was wearing a company shirt. And it was, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
And you have to make the call. We have a facility that is only so large, and we've got to figure out how we optimize that so that the most citizens can utilize it on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, the benefit to the greatest number of citizens.
Well, and I think if we're regulating it more closely and generating income to help run the transfer station more efficiently, then, later on, we're not having to, raise taxes more because we need more revenue to pay for the transfer station. So it's kind of it's one of those fee things that we've talked about in the past that I think the non-resident aspect of it really needs to be looked at. And of course, that's a whole nother can of worms, but.
All right, anything else? All right, managers report.
Start with, if any of you haven't seen the press releases or anything, we have been notified that Signal Point will be opening tomorrow, and all the facilities therein will be open as well. So that will hopefully take some of the pressure off of the Ohio Avenue access to Rainbow Lake. We got an email today from the superintendent and expressed appreciation for especially the neighbors and the residents with their patience during this time, because it did have an impact on them. So I wanted to be sure and convey that for him. Since we met last, I met with Cliff and Kyle, our stormwater manager and engineering tech over at the Playhouse, and looked at that. And we've asked an engineering firm that we do quite a bit of stormwater work with to give us a quote on basically a consultation as opposed to a full study. We had hoped by now to be able to do a hydrology study for that area, but with some unplanned projects where roadways are collapsing and storm drains are giving way, other things have taken priority. So we want to at least get them to take a look at it and give us a consultation on how we can move some of that stormwater through the area before we make any major renovations. So hopefully we'll hear something from them this week. Just as a note relative to the discussion we had on BZA, when you have a case like that and someone's trying to accomplish whatever, building a house in this case, there's a lot of other peripheral work that goes with that too. And this past week spent a lot of time working on that case where someone wanted a reduced setback and felt that one of our provisions provided a mechanism for that. But frankly, felt they were applying that incorrectly. Worked through that, talked to Harry on it, and then went through and did quite a bit of work on GIS to establish what exactly it was, what latitude they may have. And it turned out in that case, it was very minimal. But that's one of the things, and as this is discussed, I wanted to point out that whether it's me or other staff members, there's a lot of time dedicated to cases like that, trying to make sure folks get the right answer and what they can and can't do. First portion of the paving is going to be starting. We're on the schedule for tomorrow and the next day. Hopefully further as weather permits, but the paving will be underway. Also, in the last couple of weeks, had more than normal meetings for some of the other boards that I sit on, WWTA and 911 district. Been very busy with that of late as well. And just wanted to remind you guys, next Wednesday and Thursday, I'll be in training both of those days for CMFO continuing ed credits. But we'll be available if you need to call me or anything. That's all I have at this point.
Thank you. Communications and reports from mayor and council. Any council members have anything you want to bring up now? I've had a couple of BZA meetings and library meeting, and just so excited for the progress on the library expansion. That's, this is an amazing community with citizens who put a lot of money into making it work. One question that I had written down that I wanted to ask Boyd, and I think we have two positions, we have two hires, at least one open in the fire department, at least one open in the police department right now. Unless something has changed since last time we talked.
Did we fill the fire? Yep. We filled the fire position. They're doing interviews tomorrow for the police position.
Okay. I guess what I was going to ask is if we could maybe get an update from them. And I kind of would like to tie this in, because now's the time of year to do this when we're not in the budget. I'm always concerned. It comes up every year in the budget, and it doesn't seem the time to talk, it gets too tense to talk about what we pay our police and fire department officials. And I would love to have to request that Mike and Eric kind of give us an update on where we are, since it's kind of mid-year from that, on what's happening with pay in the Chattanooga market, because that's kind of the market we're in. Maybe for the next meeting, is that possible?
Sure.
If Eric, would you be okay with that?
We will try to have that for the next meeting. That is dependent on other folks providing us with information. So as long as we can get that to happen, we'll have it for the next meeting if we need some more time.
Yeah, well, that's why I wanted to bring it up tonight, just to give them a chance, because they probably hear it. I think, we're headed into an election season. I'm hearing lots of talk about how the town could do things differently and this and that. And I wish everybody could serve on the council for a while and get in and actually see the budget and see how busy everyone is within the town, and what a small staff we have, and recognize the community that we're in has high standards, and everyone works pretty hard all the time, and budgets are tight. And I know I'm still naive, but I'm less naive than I was 4 years ago. And I'm not running for anything this time, so this isn't any kind of a pitch, but just keep in mind, those of you, that are going for positions on this thing, that it's a lot of work. It's a fantastic town, but people are demanding. And sometimes you can't do everything that's asked, you know, you do your best. So anyway, sorry for that little side thing, but I've just been noticing some chatter that it's kind of picking up again about it's an expensive place to live, but it's also an amazing place to live, and partially because of our police and fire department, and our insurance rates are low and our safety rates are high. So it's another reason I think now is the time of year to start talking about that, when we see some of the great work that's being done by these folks who risk their lives for us on a daily basis. So I guess that was a suggestion from me for the tentative agenda for next time. Anybody else have anything you want to put on?
Can we back up to other business for 1 second?
Sure.
Just wanted to circle back to something we, and frankly, don't recall exactly how we discussed this previously, but we had a citizen offer to donate funds to help, in his words, clean up Lena Gibbons Park. He suggested that a multitude of trees come out. We asked the tree board to look at it. They marked, I think, 17, mostly pine trees that they're fine with coming out. Some other invasives that are in there they'd like to see come out. So they looked at it and marked what they were okay with. As we began to move forward, I think there was some question as to what exactly we were going to do. So we kind of put a hold on it. But what's been marked is what they were okay with. And just wanted to make sure you guys were okay with moving forward with that. We've gotten a good quote on it. It's nothing council will have to approve. We can move forward with it, so we can basically get about $5,000 worth of work done in there for $2,500 for the town, and the other from the citizen, and the tree board's looking at coming in and identifying spots then that honor trees can go in, things like dogwoods and things like that. So it should be okay. I just want to make sure it's okay.
Yeah. And tree boards signed off on it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that wasn't a declarative, that was question.
Yeah, I mean, they came and marked them, and
Excellent.
I haven't had any other communication, but I think maybe you guys did to some level. So I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page before we move forward.
All right, that's fantastic. And to give our thanks to the anonymous donor who's doing that. We have amazing citizens, and it's one of the reasons this is one of the best places to live. All right, anybody have anything else? Would you like to make a motion to adjourn, anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
I second that. We are.